I'm actually not that great at talking about love a whole lot, I'm finding out, when I'm trying to write these sermons for you all this week, but that's probably because I did not have that great of a start in life. For the first 10 years of my life, I was beat by my father pretty much every day. It was your typical beatings with a belt, but it was also random weird beatings with whatever he found nearby. It wasn't because he was drunk or did drugs. He just thought children should be viciously beat whenever he felt like it. When I was in the 3rd grade, my son's age, social workers came to our school class and described child abuse in terms that I could understand, and then they simply asked if any of us were ever treated to such abuse in our homes, and I eagerly raised my hand because I thought it was normal to not be able to sit down without feeling pain in your bottom. I thought all kids deserved beatings because we don't have any sense. I didn't know that it was a crime. And so I didn't expect for the social workers to immediately pull my brother and I out of school to take us to the police station and photograph our bodies, that they put my dad in jail, and that our family would be required to enter 4 years of state-mandated therapy. At that time, I thought, man, the cure is certainly worse than the illness. At that time, I also wasn't sure who was worse, my dad for beating us, or my mom for thinking that her children should be beaten so often or so severely, or the state for intervening and ripping our family apart. But yet today, I actually have a good relationship with my dad. I talk to him about every week, I send him pictures of the kids, and I visit whenever we're in the same town. And there's other people in my family who I just don't talk to. And they've never touched a hair on my head. When I tell people this, they think I probably have some version of Stockholm Syndrome, that the love I have for my father is really weird and twisted. All the books that I consulted in preparation for this sermon are very good in telling you what isn't a good relationship, but they don't offer much guidance on what to do about bad relationships. We are called to receive and give unconditional love, yet if the love is not perfect or downright abusive, what are we supposed to do? Where do we draw the line between the life-giving power of all-encompassing love and perpetuating abuse? Now, if there is acute physical violence involved in your relationship as you think about this, do what I did and get out. It is a lot better on the other side, and I will be happy to help you. However, for most of us, the matters of a good versus bad love is much more mundane. We might just be struggling with a lull in our marriage, or think that maybe what somebody's doing is abusive, but we're not quite sure about it. For me, the answer, in order to know, has been the willingness to change. How I know if the love is true is how willing each party is willing to change. This is why I still talk to my father and I don't talk to some other family relatives. Because he went to therapy. He admitted that the whole situation was entirely his fault. He apologized to my brother, to my mother, and to me. And he explained the warped and abusive childhood he came from that made him think it was okay to harm his children. He remarried and has 2 stepdaughters who he has never harmed. In fact, he hasn't raised his hand to anyone since I turned him in that day. He paid his debt to society, and this willingness to change in him is now a permanent part of his character. Since that time, he has always listened to my critiques of him, both personal and political. He's a Tea Party Republican, but he is willing to share the same reality as me, because he believes in fact-checking himself and is open to the idea that he might not be right. He thinks about what I say, and we don't always agree, but our unconditional love for each other means that we can trust each other to change for the better. I'm about to share with you the best wisdom our tradition has to offer about what makes a great relationship, the perfect standard that we should all hold ourselves to. And if I say something where you realize that your relationship isn't quite up to standard, well, I hope that at least you have what my father and I have, which is the willingness to be there for each other and the willingness to change. That you can get and give all the unconditional love in the world, and none of that matters if you and the people you care about aren't willing to be better people today than they were yesterday. And I admit in some cases change is not possible, and so you'll have to decide if you can love it or leave it. To me, the ability to change answers the question of how you know when you should give your love and how you know when your love is doing more harm than good. I have to say, when I first came to Unitarian Universalism, I wasn't quite prepared for how we handle sex and sexual ethics. Because the sex education I got growing up in Nebraska, I don't think it was the worst, but it definitely wasn't the best. They used proper terminology for body parts. That much I got out of 8th grade health. However, I did come out of that course honestly thinking that if I had sex before marriage, I would probably be covered from head to toe with genital warts. And I certainly didn't think I could ask my mom why I never saw any wart-covered people. And then as an adult, I realized that wart-based thinking wasn't the best way to raise kids. That I wanted to raise my children with a better sex education that I knew the schools were not going to teach. But Unitarian Universalism is the philosophy that does do better sex education. Now, normally when I think of sex education in religious groups, I think it's pretty bad. I think that's probably the reason why my 8th grade health teacher was focused on warts as punishment for premarital sex. However, the United Church of Christ and the Unitarian Universalists joined in the 1970s to form a curriculum called About Your Sexuality, or AYS. It was a scientific-based curriculum that helped people navigate their sexuality, both adults and youth, in a non-judgmental way. It welcomed sexual minorities and gender minorities at a time when both of these groups were deeply closeted. Its feminist voice empowered women to use birth control and enjoy sex without shame. This program continues to progress to the Our Whole Lives program, which we teach in our congregations today and has sex education courses from birth through all the way through death. This program has a distinct value system that religiously supports a positive view on sex education. It says that knowledge about human sexuality is helpful, not harmful, and that every individual has a right to accurate information about sexuality and have their questions answered. It believes that healthy sexual relationships are consensual, that both people consent. It's non-exploitative. That means it's equal in terms of power, that neither person is pressuring or forcing the other person in activities or behaviors. That it's mutually pleasurable, that it's safe, that there's no or low risk of unintended pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, and emotional pain. That it's developmentally appropriate, that it's based on mutual expectations and caring, and that it is respectful, including the values of honesty and keeping the commitments that we've made to each other. And it says that sexual intercourse is only one of the many ways of expressing sexual feelings with a partner, and that it's healthier for young adolescents to postpone intercourse. So to say these values in another way is that if a love asks you to deny knowledge about yourself and your body and your health, then it is not the love you seek. That if some love requires forcing you against your will, then it is not the love. That if it requires your degradation without your consent, then it is not the love. If it requires that you pleasure them but you get nothing, or that you only get pleasure and they don't get anything, then that is not the love. If the love makes you take a risk you're not comfortable with, if it doesn't consider where you are on the path to wholeness, if it doesn't communicate with you to create a shared understanding of what will make everyone involved happy, then it is not the love. If you're not respected, if your dignity is lost, it is not the love. And if the love demands sex as proof of its existence, then that is not the love. Because love takes on many different forms of intimacy. So I don't know about you, but again, to hear this value system was a revelation to me in learning about Unitarian Universalism. To hear these values, or to hear the reading about Reverend Deborah Hafner, who went to the Bible and said, you know what, that the Bible actually affirms sex, and it doesn't shame the act, still challenges me and my Episcopal upbringing. But it resonates across our theology of love, where we do not believe in a moral system that causes harm. We test our beliefs and think to ourselves, does what we believe hurt one another? Does it influence our actions in such a way that it increases suffering? And if it does, we change and we progress. We believe in a greater love that binds us all together and a love that does no harm. Our love is based on consent and relationships both intimate and cosmic, because we do not ask people to submit to a God they do not consent to as an act of faith, and neither should you be with someone that you do not consent to. Your connection to the sacred is a relationship that you define. And our connection to each other is also a relationship that we all define, and if you do it well, you redefine that relationship on a daily basis. The love you seek and give helps you to be a better person and a better people, and it helps those around you too. This is the basis of the sex education that we teach in our congregations. And I'm so glad we teach it, because our approach to sexual ethics didn't just provide a curriculum for my kids to go through, but it helped us be a better family. That same minister, Reverend Dab Hafner, she has a book called From Diapers to Dating on sex education, from raising kids, from birth to puberty. And it's full of rationality and real-life examples, such as what to do when your son comes home who's jealous of his schoolmate that has Playboys in their attic, and asks you as a parent to buy a Playboy for him. So you'll have to read the book to figure out how to solve that one. But one of the best things I learned from the book was an actionable way to implement the ethics of consent, which is the no rule. Basically, anytime anyone says no or stop, you have to stop. Even if you're just tickling a kid and they laugh and they say, no, stop, you have to stop. Because this teaches your child that their words have power even over adults. That they get the final say over their body. So here in this congregation, this is why it's so important that we ask children their permission before giving them a hug, a kiss on the cheek, or a pat on the head. They need to know that they always have this power over their bodies. This life lesson reduced a lot of stress in our households because my kids have to follow the no rule with each other. So if one of them is annoying the other one, and they say stop, they have to stop. And so let me tell you, the gift of my children not being able to annoy each other is 10 times worth whatever I spent getting that book. I think I got it for free from the church library. And the fact that both of my children know how consent actually works in their life means I feel a lot better about sending them out into the world. There are many more things in these books about what to teach your kids and how to have a healthy relationship that celebrates sex instead of shaming it, no matter who you are or where you come from. And as you embark on the journey to love and be loved, I hope you do have a clearer sense of when it's time to love and when it's time to let go. The ability and willingness to change is what makes or break a relationship, because believe me, my spouse, Tom Foster, is a changed man from when we married first 13 years ago. But the thing is I have changed too. My father, mother, friends, and wider family, we all believe that we will change together for the better because we love each other. And the family members who don't, well, I mean, as the saying goes, I might spit on them if they were on fire, but I'm not really sure if I'd cross the street to do it. They're never going to change. Now, my kids, it's a little different because they probably won't have to change a bit, and I would love them until the sun fades out of the sky. But I feel that kids in general are just naturally loving beings because they always change for the better in response to unconditional love. The willingness to change in the name of love is so strong that not only do I believe in it for my family, but I believe in it for the institutions that hold our society together. That our government that seems so broken now will change if we keep showing up and ask it to. That our schools, police, and this very congregation, our mission statement on the front reflects that we are to be spiritually transformed by this grand experiment of worshiping together, And so I thank you for being willing to discover amongst each other how you'll change for the better, and for holding me in your hearts so that I will change for the better too. For this is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to help one another, and to seek the truth in love.